It's time for 41 is the Mic, a weekly Chiefs podcast with Nick Jacobs of KSHB 41 and Matt Derrick of Chiefs Digest. 41 is the Mic starts now.
That's right, everyone. We are back with a bonus episode of 41 is the Mic on your podcast feed. I am Matt Derrick from Chiefs Digest, alongside roster construction enthusiast Nick Jacobs from KSHB 41. Nick, how are you doing?
Matt, I'm great. We're going to do some team building here. We're going to build some teams. And you know, I mean, I don't enjoy people losing their jobs and losing their dreams, but it is kind of it's just a part of that process each and every year. That's always intriguing from what you and I may see and what other people may see, and where the team kind of throws us some curveballs that we may not expect in terms of roster management.
Yeah, and this is the most interesting time of the year when it comes to building the roster, because there's more that's going on right now in this 3, 4, 5 day period than in any other 5 day period of the NFL season. Even at the end of the year, when teams are signing players to reserve future contracts, even the draft is not as crazy as the next 5 days are, because teams have got to be down from the Chiefs are down to 90 players after they had placed Jaron Hayek. He's now on the reserve injured list, so he's still around, but that's one of the moves that they have to make to get down to 53. So they're going to be going from 90 to 53 by 3 p.m. on Tuesday. Then after that, on Wednesday, they're going to be able to start signing practice squad players. They can sign players from other teams. I mean, there's a lot of different things that can be going on, and they're also going to have to make some decisions about injured reserve players. We're going to go through all of that right here in our exercise, just kind of what Brett Veach is doing this weekend with Andy Reid, Matt Nagy, Steve Spagnuolo, Dave Toub. I mean, everybody. After the game on Thursday night, the evaluation continues. Nick, we talked about it before. I mean, they evaluate these players every single day in training camp. They grade them out, as Brett Veach has talked about. They give more weight to the game, so the performances in the games make a big difference. But, they grade them every single day, and that's why you see some changes day to day in the depth charts and where players line up. The coaches meet every night at about 8 o'clock and go over all of this, and it affects what happens on the field the very next morning at training camp. Now, this weekend, they do the evaluation with the coaches. And, Brett Veach met on Friday with Andy Reid and with the coaches to go through everything. They meet with the training staff to find out where injured players are, what decisions they may have to make there, because that doesn't impact things. If you're going to place a player on waivers who's injured, there's processes to that. I mean, you're responsible for those injuries. You're responsible for taking care of those players. So there's a lot that goes into it. And that's why these things don't happen on the dime, Nick. I mean, that's why a team like the Chiefs that played an early game on Thursday, they're going to take every single moment that they've got until Tuesday to make sure that they're making the right decisions, and also just to deal with what can happen. They've got practice on Monday and Tuesday. You don't want to, waive a guy on Sunday and have somebody hurt on a Monday or Tuesday and wish you had not waived that guy on Sunday.
Yeah, and then with the NFL still having games up until Sunday night on NBC, there's still teams left to evaluate for the scouts. So, and they've been able to kind of keep on task with a handful of games each and every day, whether it was on Friday or Saturday, and they're probably going through all those, and then into Sunday, and then luckily they'll have three or four games on Sunday to go through, and then if there's somebody that they think stood out, like I saw a couple players that did, then we'll see what ends up happening with them. I know there was a Raiders wide receiver that had a big night on NFL Network last night against the 49ers. He had a punt return for a touchdown and had a receiving touchdown. I know where it was at time-wise wasn't exactly, against the number one starters in the NFL, but it was impressive, the speed that he showcased, and it's a guy that I'm going to be keeping tabs on.
And that's exactly what Brett Veach and his staff are doing. And we're going to do a little bit of exercise right now. Just kind of go through it in the same type of process and the same discussions that Brett Veach is having, with Andy Reid, and then in conjunction with Matt Nagy and Steve Spagnuolo on both sides of the football. So let's dive into it, and we'll start on the offensive side and start with the shortest conversation that they're going to have. Okay, Patrick Mahomes is the starter, Carson Wentz is the backup. Everybody's good with that?
Yeah. No, you're 100% right. Yeah, I think you're keeping two on the active roster, obviously. Chris Oladokun, with him, there's enough to continue to develop. There's enough there athletically, and he's starting to get comfortable in their system overall. So in that regard, you kind of really want to continue to develop that. But on practice squad, and for people that don't know, on practice squad, there's if you have a quarterback on there, you can elevate them every single game. There's unlimited elevations for that, as long as they're on practice squad to be the emergency quarterback if need be. So I think from a roster perspective, you're going to see a lot of teams take advantage of that, or potentially do that, whether it's the third or fourth quarterback. And with a guy like Ian Book, I just don't see enough there to invest a practice squad spot this year for him. I was disappointed a lot of the time whenever he wouldn't give his receivers a chance up at camp and just throw the ball. Like, it may not be right, it may not be perfect, but just throw the ball, give the other give your receivers out there a chance to make a play, try to help them get a good grade. But he would take off running so many times, and he was so indecisive, and he'd pat the ball. So corners knew and safeties knew when to break on it. So for me, yeah, it's Mahomes and Wentz. What about you, Matt?
Yeah, I'm the same way. Oladokun on the practice squad for me, assuming another team doesn't swoop in and try and steal him. And I think that even if it came down to practice squad choices, I don't think it would be like a Shane Buechele, signing with Buffalo last year. I think Chris Oladokun likes it in Kansas City. It's a good place for him. I don't think he would sign with another team's practice squad. Ian Book, let's face it, was a camp arm and it put up a good fight, but I would stick with Oladokun if you needed him in a pinch. I think that's the guy that you trust. We're going to have a more interesting conversation at running back, because I think we're pretty safe. I'm pretty safe here. And coming into the meeting, Nick,
yeah,
I'm thinking, okay, Isaiah Pacheco and Carson Steele is on this team.
Yeah.
Okay.
100% right.
What are we going to do next?
So, I mean, for me personally, you can tell me if we need to change this. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I think right now he's got stuff bigger than football, with what he admitted, with what he told us at the podium and everything about the PTSD, and then about the syndrome that he's dealing with. And I think he's got a good support system in Kansas City with the staff that works with him, and the locker room support that he has from the players and the coaching staff overall. So if I'm in their shoes right now, I mean, I would entertain injured reserve. And for people that don't know, like, injured reserves change this year to where you don't have to wait and put them on the active 53 and then be able to do the injured reserve. Like, you can do it in advance if you need to. So from that aspect of it, I just think the smart play is to let him continue to work through what he's going through, and just but also keep him around the organization, keep him around the staff, keep him around the system, and still have him be as much a part of the team while he navigates such a complicated, off the field thing.
Yeah, and this is where I wouldn't be surprised if during this process, if you're Brett Veach, you don't have to bring in a Chris Shea, that's really adversed in the rules, and Jack Woloff's his assistant now, that really dives into just, what are the options here? Because I'm not really aware of anything other than injured reserve. I mean, I understand there is a exempt list that you can place a player on, if they need to just be, away from football, but that exempt list takes him away from the team. And I don't think that's what the Chiefs want to do. He returned to practice this week. He's playing football. So I'm not even sure if injured reserve is technically even an option. I mean, and this gets into just, I think that the NFL is still too far behind in how it handles, mental health. They need to figure out a way that, you can let players maybe be on a list that doesn't have the stigma that, is attached to, being an exempt, and recognizing that players who maybe have mental health issues, last thing they need is to be away from the team. So, I don't know what the good answer is. I think that if it comes down to football, which ultimately every decision with this does, it comes down to football.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Chiefs are probably a better team with Clyde Edwards-Helaire than any of the other options at this point. It might mean that, you want to have an extra body on the practice squad at running back. Maybe you would want to carry 2 or 3 running backs now on the practice squad, just in case. But I think for Clyde's sake, and I think for the sake of the team, I think for a lot of reasons, I think you have to have him on the 53. And because even from a football standpoint, I think he does more for you right now than Eric Prince. When they're both healthy and they're both playing, I think he does more for you. So I don't know. This is going to be one of the trickier decisions that they have to face. And I don't know. I'm just not 100% sure what the options are. And obviously, whatever the Chiefs end up choosing, I mean, this will be a discussion on Wednesday when we get to talk to Brett Veach after everything comes down and how they decided decided to do with Clyde. But I'm also willing, Nick, to make that kind of commitment because, or at least make that decision because, running backs, for better or for worse, are a dime a dozen. And every team, I think values their running backs more than anybody else. I think the Chiefs have a couple of running backs that they like, whether it's Deneric Prince, Keontae Ingram, on down. I think they have several running backs. They would have no problems getting onto the practice squad. I don't think they're going to lose any of them on the waiver wire because everybody kind of feels the way that they do about their own running backs. I don't think anybody in the NFL is really coveting anybody else's practice squad running backs at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, and so I mean, like Bailey and Reese Zamet, like I would put on the practice squad. I think there's promise that they can continue to develop there. I mean, Deneric Prince I had on my 53, but I think that can go either way on that from a numbers perspective. And then Ingram, I think, kind of got taped to go see if he can find another opportunity right now. But Carson Steele really kind of took the wind out of his sail, and potentially Deneric Prince's sail too. With how powerful of a runner he is.
Yeah. Tight end probably going to be another quick discussion because I think we both have 3 tight ends on our 53 and no problems there with Travis Kelce, Noah Gray, and Jared Wiley. Question's going to be, do we have room? Do we want to keep a 4th tight end?
I think it comes down to what they do. The O-line impact, I think, is going to be a part of it. And then if they keep 4 running backs, then I don't see keeping 4 tight ends, and I think they're gonna have to keep a 7 receiver either way. So if you do want to keep a 4th tight end, I think you're having to keep 9 O-line or 3 running backs to be able to make that work. And I think Irv Smith Jr., I think he could help in that H-back role and maybe even in that fullback role to a certain extent. He had some quality blocks, but he's also athletic enough to work in the red zone and kind of be an asset there. So I'm whether he's on practice squad or he's on the active roster, I think both make sense.
Yeah, let's put it this way. I'm not pounding the table saying that we have to get Irv Smith Jr. on the active roster. So, and to your point, it's either getting back an offensive lineman or running back. And I think I'd rather have either the extra running back or the extra offensive lineman. So,
yeah. And then Kupp I'd put on practice squad too.
Kupp is a good candidate for that for sure.
Yep.
With you there. Wide receiver. Okay. Yeah. This one's going to have some discussion. This one might have some fireworks here. I don't know. I assume that we're pretty comfortable with 4 players on the 53 in Hollywood Brown, Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, and Justin Watson. And I'm assuming neither one of us is going to be advocating putting Hollywood Brown on injured reserve to start the season because we don't think he's going to miss 4 weeks.
Right.
We think he's going to be back faster than that. So I'm not putting him on injured reserve because if he does, he is going to miss the first 4 games of the season. That right now, it seems to be the indication. So if we're set there, then where do you go from there, Nick?
At 5, I still think it's McCole Hardman, and I think you still have him as an insurance policy in case Worthy gets hurt, or some of the packages you may have wanted to have Hollywood Brown in. McCole may be able to give you that with his understanding of the offense. I'm personally expecting Sky Moore to make the roster because the fact that they put him in, I know Watson was hurt with the foot injury, but the fact they put him in Jacksonville in Brown's spot and had him do that, and the fact they talked about how you can play multiple roles and how strong he's been on kick and punt return as a returner in general, like he's earned an opportunity to really kind of push that through. I just think at this point, Kadarius Toney, I don't see it. I see a guy whose heart's not really in it anymore. And there's just too much inconsistency to make that work. And I feel like that 7 spot's down to Justin Ross and Nico Remigio. Remigio, I think, gives you a solid returner. But from that first preseason game to the third preseason game, he kind of looked either a little worn out and didn't have the same kind of impact that he did during OTAs and early on in training camp. He has some impressive catches and everything. I still think it's worth at minimum developing. And with Justin Ross, I think he's a package guy that's 6'4" that you can kind of throw, work with in the red zone, also be able to kind of use him in the boundary. And if you're kind of wanting to hold back on Jared Wiley a little bit, then Justin Ross does kind of make sense to take some of those red zone package roles if you want to do that.
Well, I'm trying to step into the Matt Nagy role here because I'm going to advocate, but I think that the Chiefs have been at least representing, because I don't feel this way. I would say, I mean, I might as well just show my true colors, Nick. Obviously, I haven't been the biggest Justin Ross fan in the world, so I still haven't seen enough from Justin Ross to put him on my 53. I'd go with Nico Remigio, but I don't think the Chiefs are doing that. I mean, based on what we have seen, unless this has been a world-class smuggling operation, Nick, of trying to sneak Nico Remigio through something, I don't know. Clearly trying to sneak Nico through waivers somehow. I mean, that certainly seems to be everything that they're trying to do here. But unless this has just been a massive smoke screen, Sky Moore and McCole Hardman are making this team. And then, if you're going to keep a 7th receiver, and I think all indications are that they are, is it Justin Ross or is it Kadarius Toney? And I think Kadarius Toney got a great showcase on Thursday night that he didn't necessarily hit out of the park, but I think you're absolutely calling some teams this weekend and seeing if they're interested. I don't think you're going to be able to trade. You might be able to trade a Sky Moore. I don't think the Chiefs want to, but I don't think you can trade a McCole Hardman. I don't think you're trading a Justin Ross. I don't think there's any market out there for them. You might be able to trade Kadarius Toney, but I don't see any indication that the Chiefs are just, flat out in love with him. But this team does have a fixation on Justin Ross still that I just don't see going away quite yet. So Justin Ross is the 7th receiver in my eyes, and I'm saying that trying to look through the eyes of Matt Nagy and Connor Embry and these guys, because they see something in Justin that I still haven't seen. But you know what, Nick? Your mileage may vary.
It might, Matt. It might. Got one more offensive position, and we're doing pretty good on time, Matt.
Yep. So offensive line, we know the 5 starters: Kingsley Suamadia, Joe Thuney, Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, and Jawan Taylor. Then it gets interesting. Wanya Morris has the bone bruise, Nick, but he did play the other night. He needs rest. He's getting some rest right now. So I'm not certain that he's going on injured reserve. Would be then one of your 6 linemen. Then where do you go from there? Hunter Norris, I think, absolutely. Mike Caliendo absolutely has spots on this team. So there gets you to 8. Now, are you going to keep 9? You're going to keep 10? And is it a tackle, interior? Where are you going, Nick?
I mean, for me, I think CJ Hansen, I would keep on active 53 and let him continue to develop there. I'm not enamored with Lucas Niang, I think, but I know he's got enough experience and he's been around this team long enough that I think they'll kind of give him the nod. Ethan Driscoll, for me, it's really just a question of can he pass through waivers or not, because he's got the build, he's got the bend, he's got the foot quickness, he's got the athletic ability to pull in space. And, I mean, I'm just saying with him, there's a lot there to work with. It's going to take another year to get him from a strength training perspective and also a technique perspective, and occasionally some anchor issues. But if he can get those worked out, I think you've at minimum got a promising swing tackle down the road that could take over for Wanya Morris. It's just a question of do you think you can get him through waivers or not. Chu Godric, I think, is a guy that needs to go on practice squad. Still athletically, there's some promise there, but his pickup and pass off had issues. And if you want to continue to try to develop him and use the designation you have on him with the international thing, I would take advantage of that while you can. And yeah, I mean, for the most part, I think that's it. I mean, Caliendo, I'm 50-50 on. I think he kind of waned the longer training camp and everything went on, and I just didn't think he had the strength that you kind of want from an interior guy. That's why I'd be nervous if you took Hansen off there, because I think Hansen has a lot more upside right now.
Yeah, I mean, I would still favor keeping 10 offensive linemen. That's why I would keep 3 running backs and 3 tight ends. So, because with Wanya Morris dealing with that bone bruise, I think you have to keep an extra tackle. It has to be Lucas Niang, because I don't think Driscoll or Godric are either one of them. What the worst case scenario is, one of your tackles goes down. Wanya Morris has to go in the first month of the season. Okay, the bone bruise, what if it pops up again? And now you've got to go with another. If you don't have a 4th tackle on there, or if it's Driscoll or Godric, who might not even be active on game day, you're probably having to move Joe Tooney over there in a pinch again. So, and I don't think you really want to do that if you don't have to with Tooney at this point in his career and coming back from that injury on top of that. So, yeah, I think Niang has to make it, and Hansen, I wouldn't want to take a chance on losing. I think there's just still too much upside there. It's too much to like. So I'm keeping 10 there, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Chiefs stuck with 9. Maybe that would surprise me. They only stick with 3 offensive tackles. Who knows? But I'd go with 10. So
yeah,
we've got. Go ahead, Nick.
I was just saying, we saw Wanye and we saw Lucas both working at the guard position during training camp. So they were testing that out as well.
Yes, they did. Well, we've picked 25 players on offense. So by virtue of that, we're going over to Steve Spagnuolo's side and for his meeting, and we're going to say, Steve, guess what? You get 25 guys. You don't get 26. You also don't have to have 24, but you're getting 25. So who are your best 25, Steve? And let's start with the defensive line. Once again, let's acknowledge there are some injuries here, but we know that on the 53, it'll be George Karlaftis, Chris Jones, even with the groin and the shoulder and everything else during the preseason, he'll be on the 53. Tershawn Wharton, Mike Dana, Felix Anadike-Uzama will be the 5th. After that, we probably have discussions across the board. I mean, I think Mike Pennell is going to be one of the 6, one of the next one for sure. I think there's 6 right there. I think you can bank on.
Yep.
Where are you going from here? Because you're going to have probably at least 9 defensive linemen, maybe 10.
Yeah, I think they're going to keep. I think they're going to keep Derek Nottie. I think they're going to keep Neil Farrell, and I think Farrell's going to be there. I think they're going to let Nottie continue to work through everything, because he was in that final preseason game, but I think they're going to let him work through getting back into shape and getting back into the condition. And I think Farrell's going to get more snaps than him early on, but I think they'll have 3 1-techs, just because I think they want to be able to have a solid stopgap up the middle to avoid teams being able to run on them. So I think that's part of that front. Defensive end wise, I'm leaning towards Truman Jones because of how much I use him on special teams, and just I thought he had the better training camp, but I just don't think Malik Herring's going to be more than what he is. He's a solid run defender, but athletically, like, he couldn't chase the quarterback on the boot. He couldn't change and accelerate through to be able to get to that. I think he's always going to be a tweener between the defensive tackle and an end. And athletically, I just don't think he's ever going to be the type of end that they need. And I think Fabian Lovett you put on practice squad, because whenever I asked Joe Cullen about him, you can kind of tell he sees the ability there. He just knows it's not consistently there right now, and I think they kind of want to continue to develop him. But I mean, from a defensive end perspective, like if the Chiefs make any additions, I feel like D end is the spot they have to do it, because if Karlaftis gets hurt or Mike Dana gets hurt, I just that pass rush is going to suffer mightily really quick without having Charles Omenihu back, as quickly as you would probably like. Because if Omenihu was here, you don't have the same urgency to have to get a defensive end. But not having Omenihu and thinking worst case scenario something did happen to Karlaftis or that, there's not enough there at end to really feel comfortable with where you're at in my book.
I don't think that there was anything that, because I'd asked Joe Cullen earlier in training camp, kind of about this heading towards this direction, Nick, because I don't see 5 right now NFL defensive ends on this roster. And like you said, I mean, Malik Herring might be borderline. I asked Joe Cullen specifically about, defensive tackles that have inside out capabilities. And we know about Chris Jones. He went there. He also went to Tershawn Wharton. Say there's a guy that we can play on the outside if necessary. I didn't see any greater evidence than what I saw on Thursday night that the Chiefs are thinking the exact same lines of this, because they had Matt Dickerson playing edge at one point and playing on the outside in some passing situations. That's telling me that they know that they need some of these defensive tackles to be able to kick outside on occasion, because they can only carry 4 defensive ends to start the season. So I'm carrying 6 defensive tackles. That's my pitch to Brett Veach. I need 6 of those guys. I need Neil Farrell. I need Matt Dickerson, and I need Derek Noddy. And especially because Derek Noddy's not 100%. Right. Talking to Derek in the locker room on Thursday, he told me he still can't. That was his left elbow and left tricep that he had the surgery on. He still can't touch his right shoulder with his left hand. And so that's not 100% yet for Derek Noddy. So he needs some, continually protection, a little bit of rest. No evidence that he's going to be on injured reserve, but, he might go on injured reserve as Truman Jones, because he has not played since injuring his knee, didn't play the other night, hasn't practiced this week. If the training staff is going to say Truman Jones isn't going to be 100% in the first month of the season, I'm putting him on injured reserve, because if you do need Truman Jones at some point this year, you need 100% of Truman Jones. You don't need 90% of him. Right. And I'm having the same conversation you mentioned there with Brett Veach. I'm saying, is there anybody who can go get me? I mean, I need some help here at edge. If there's somebody, just to get us, as maybe just to get us through until a minute he comes back. But then you have to worry about, what if somebody else gets injured? That's not going to solve your problem if somebody else gets hurt before Minihue comes in. But Minihue and BJ Thompson can both go to their respective reserve list. Minihue can start the season on the physically unable to perform list. BJ Thompson can stay on the non-football injury list. They both would have to miss the first 4 weeks of the season, but there's no concern there. They were going to miss the first 4 weeks anyway. So They can stay on those lists. You don't have to do anything with them until they're ready to come back. So Nick, are you keeping 9 or are you keeping 10 defensive linemen?
For me personally, saying what you did about Truman Jones, and you got to put Matt Dickerson in that spot, because athletically he gives you more than what I think Malik Herring does. But I think those are the 2 in contention that are currently on the roster right now. But I'm telling you, if you can go find yourself 2 defensive ends, or if you can go find yourself a D tackle on another squad that could play DN for you, even if it's for rundowns, I don't care. But I want to see 2 more defensive ends on this roster that are currently not here at this time.
Well, you sound like a gentleman who, in our next group, might be keeping 1 more than I'm planning on, because going on the linebackers. Yeah. And I think we'll agree, Leo Chanel, Nick Bolton, and Drew Tranquil, safely onto the 53. Yep. Who's safely on the 53 after that for you?
I mean, Jack Cochran is, because he's the backup Mike linebacker in the green dot, and they trust him. They trust him with that defense, and if he needs to go out there, they believe in 100%. And I think he's the next guy in line. Athletically, he's solid. He's in the ballpark of Nick Bolton without much problem. Maybe a little bit more. He's not at Tranquil's level, but not many people on that roster are. And then Cam Jones is obviously going to be the other guy that I think is beyond worthy of being on the active roster. For me personally, I think Curtis Jacobs is going to be a really promising 4th-phase special teams player, really good athletically, and I think he showed enough that I would be nervous about him not clearing waivers. But I mean, we'll see what they think. And then here's the other thing, Matt, I'll throw at you. Say you're only able to get 1 defensive end, whether you sign a veteran or you pick somebody, you're able to get somebody off waivers or trade for somebody. Leo Chanel, I want to see get some opportunities to rush from the defensive end position, whether it's stand up or it's him with his hand in the dirt. I'm telling you, the strength and athletic ability he has, I think he would cause some tackles, some problems. Or if he's in a wide 9, I think he would cause some guys problems because of the strength he has. And selfishly, that's just that may be part of the solution. You actually need a defensive end, to where I think keeping 6 helps you if you need to do that in certain situations, and that keeps Leo on the field for all 3 downs. So then maybe in 3rd down he's in a rush package. So then you do have that 6th guy that can play special teams or be able to kind of relieve in some spots. And Curtis Jacobs is a good zone coverage linebacker. So, I mean, for me personally, that's what I would do at linebacker, but I'm going to understand either way. But I think those are the names that are going to be involved.
Yeah, and I could be convinced. I mean, I'm not married to the 10 defensive linemen that the Chiefs have and that I have on the 53 right now. I mean, and this is even, I mean, hey, let's face it, we're having this discussion very early Sunday morning. I have until 3 p.m. Tuesday, Nick. So yeah. I mean, I might even be telling Brett Veach if I'm Steve Spagnuolo, let's put a pin in this for now. I mean, we're going with 10 defensive linemen, but you know what? After practice Monday, maybe even Tuesday morning, I might decide I need Curtis Jacobs. I mean, we need to have some more meetings about this. We might need to grade one more practice and just figure out what we got here. Because and also playing a factor into this too is that I think you have a couple of safeties that can play linebacker as well in a pinch if needed and play in the box. So, yep. Can you get away with that? But then again, we've also been talking about how much you need just safeties and linebackers for the new kick coverage rules. Mm-hmm. So, does that bring in, we're needing Curtis Jacobs? But then again, if you're able to get Curtis Jacobs, Cole Christensen, and Swayze Bozeman onto the practice squad and give me basically 9 practice squad elevations and, a half season of practice squad elevations from those guys for special teams purposes, okay, I can live with that if I'm Dave Toub. Yeah. So maybe that's why, Dave Toub knows he has to pound the table for Nico Remigio more than anybody else, because that's the one guy that maybe he wants more than anybody else. Yeah. Okay, that's definitely, linebacker is definitely one that we're kind of iffy on. I mean, I'm at least iffy on it. I'm going to wait until Tuesday morning before I tell Brett Veach exactly what I have to have.
Yeah, either way, I think it'll be 5 or 6. And I think it'll be those names.
Yep, we agree. Cornerback, Nick. No, I don't know what we're going to do here. I mean, okay, Trent McDuffie, 1. Yes. Nazeeh Johnson's hurt. Joshua Williams is hurt.
Yes.
I don't think that either one of them are hurt enough to go on injured reserve, but they're both hurt. So we got to get the report from Rick. Rick Burkholder. We got to find out how those guys are doing. Yeah. And then what do we do? I mean, even if you say Nazeeh Johnson, Joshua Williams, and Jalen Watson are on the 53, there's 4. Mm-hmm. What do you do next? Because I'm not sure I can tell you what they're going to do.
I think that's something they may still be deciding themselves, but at this point, I feel like Kelvin Joseph was the closest in the preseason game to giving the type of effort that they're kind of hoping to see, not necessarily from a second corner, just in general making plays. Because Jalen Watson was really rusty out there, and part of it, like when he bit on that play fake that opened their first explosive pass that they had. Jamar Conner was expecting him to take it, and Jaden Hicks came down because the tight end or the receiver, whoever motioned in. So then Jaden Hicks had to come down and cover them and cover in that area. And then Chamari just bit on the run and let his receiver go by him. And then, Jalen let his receiver go by him, and Chamari was supposed to be center field, but he's like, okay, I'll come over and help out because this guy's coming free and this is not going to go well. And then, that mishap happened. But yeah, I mean, I think Kelvin Joseph, I kind of see him as the 5th guy. And I never really thought Keith Taylor was going to be, the potential 6th guy. But after Steve Spagnuolo talked about him, I'm like, hey, he said Mike Frazier ran all these numbers, and from a production perspective, he was this. So, I mean, I think Steve wanted to give Taylor a chance to really kind of prove himself to maybe be that 6th corner. And Kamal Haddon, I think, belongs on practice squad because he's in trail too much, and I don't think it's a part of the coverage. And I would love to see Echo Boydo because of his special team ability and gunner ability. Love to see him on practice squad, but I wouldn't be stunned if he goes and tries to find an opportunity somewhere else, to get that opportunity, to get a chance on another squad. And then, yeah, for the most part, and Nick Jones, I think, kind of really belongs on practice squad. You were kind of hoping he'd step up and kind of maybe move into that third or fourth corner spot, but I just didn't see it in training camp. He had guys get past him too many times.
Are you going to stick with 5 or are you going to stick with 6 at corner?
I'm sticking with 6, but I will, I think it's in that 5-6 range no matter what.
Yeah, I'm a little bit flip-flopped on you in that I'm sold on at least the story, the bill of goods that I've been pitched by Steve Spagnuolo.
Yeah.
And the actions of the Chiefs that Keith Taylor's number 5 and Joseph is number 6 right now. I'm not still sold on that, but that's the way I've got them in that order. Mm-hmm. I'm right now I'm keeping 5, but again, this is another spot where Monday I could change my mind, and that's why I'm going to have another 53 projection that comes out Monday after practice because I need another session. Mm-hmm. I need another look to see if these guys, to see how I really feel about a couple of things. It's really more, and really less so about the order of Keith Taylor and Kelvin Joseph. A little bit about that, but a little bit more of just, is it going to be 6 or 5? I mean, right now I'm going to advocate for 5, but I'm not sold on that. And like I said, I need some more information. But to your point, Kamal Hadden is swimming. I mean, there's no doubt. As Dave Merritt would say, he's Dory right now. I mean, he needs to be on the practice squad for some seasoning. There's no shame in that, but he just needs to see some time. The frustrating thing is that Nick Jones and Echo Boydo look the same as last year. Mm-hmm. And maybe even not quite as good as last year. Right. I mean, both of them, I thought, had much better camps last year than they have had this year. And maybe that's just simply, the competition. Maybe there's better guys this year. Maybe Taylor and Joseph are both veteran guys. Maybe they just pushed ahead of them because of that experience. And I would base, to your point, Nick, I mean, I'm not expecting that if Echo Boydo gets placed on waivers that he comes back, because I think there might be a team that claims him on waivers. We'll see. Yeah. Maybe the same with Nick Jones. So I don't know. But, Jalen Watson had 53 snaps the other night, and they wore him out for a reason. I mean, they wanted to try and get him as much work as possible to get that rust off of him. So hopefully the rust is behind him. Safety is the other big one. And this one should be a fairly simple conversation because Justin Reid, Brian Cook, Shamari Connor, and Jaden Hicks are on this team. Yes. Right? I mean, there's no discussion. Only discussion, and you've already said you're keeping 6 corners, so I know you're only keeping 4 safeties because we've run out of numbers here. And I'm keeping 5. I'm not happy about it, but I'm keeping 5 right now because for 2 reasons. One, I keep looking at special teams, and Dave Toub absolutely is enamored with Deion Bush and has Deion Bush on every single special team. And he can't play special teams every single phase from the practice squad. So I'm assuming that Deion Bush is going to be on this roster from that standpoint. And then, it's just, hey, is it Deion Bush or a 6th corner? Right now, I'm just not sold that there's a 6th corner that I'm taking, and especially when it's going to be active on game day. I mean, more likely than not, you're going to have Deion Bush active on game day for special teams. And I'll even add this, is that even though I'm going with Deion Bush, Chris Roland Wallace has made a real bid. I don't think it's going to be enough to squeeze onto the 53. I think he's going to be a great guy to have on the practice squad, but that dude's had a great camp. I mean, if we had not had maybe the Carson Steele experience at training camp, we might be talking about the meteoric rise of Chris Roland Wallace, because he's done the exact same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I get Deion Bush, whether he's on the 53 when you keep 5 corners or if Deion Bush goes to the practice squad, but I think he's going to see a lot of time on special teams either way, in practice squad or elsewhere. But I mean, your 4, it's Justin Reid, it's going to be Jaden Hicks, it's going to be Shamari Connor, and then Brian Cook, without a doubt. So, I don't have any issues either way with it, and I mean, I think they'll actively look to see if they can find a corner, and that may be a little bit easier than finding a defensive end. But I would say among the 4 spots that I would look if I'm in their shoes, is there a veteran running back that comes available that you like, or is there a running back you want to take a waiver claim on? And then obviously defensive end, no matter what. And then if there's a corner, I think those are kind of the three primary spots. And if there's an offensive tackle, you want to give a couple weeks to let them develop and just kind of have them on the practice squad and then try to elevate them. I'm good with that either way. And then obviously specialists, don't need to talk about. They're already locked in. They're set in stone. Don't need to talk about them. So,
yeah, I'm assuming that you don't even need to keep Randon Plattner around on the practice squad just in case. He proved the other night, even if he's in the Lake of the Ozarks on a Sunday, he can come in and play on a Thursday and you're fine. Yep. So, can't necessarily do the same job that James Winchester did. So, not going to say that.
We're done with our meeting, obviously.
Done with our meeting. We're going to get together again on Tuesday.
Yeah, we have to come up this week.
We've got live stream. I'm going to be doing a live stream starting at 3:00 on Tuesday afternoon when everything is coming down with the roster decision. So we will be going through that. And then, Nick, I guess we haven't really talked about it. Next Sunday. Yep. We're going to be back for 41 is the mic on your regular scheduled dial.
Yep. That's it.
There you go. So hope everybody enjoyed the conversation today. Leave your comments. If you have any questions, post them over there on the YouTube. We'll be glad to answer them. Any questions that you got, as always, hit the bell to subscribe. Give us the 5-star review so that other people can help find the podcast. Get all that fun stuff. We appreciate it. With that, Nick, I'll leave it to you.
Till next time, I bid you adieu.
You've been listening to 41 is the Mic, presented by KSHB 41, your home of the Chiefs and Chiefs Digest.